Building a Rich Legacy Explained, brought to you in part by Dignity Memorial.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Building a Rich Legacy Explained. I'm Liz West. Many of life's true riches, they aren't in your wallet. They come from spending time with family and friends and serving our community. So today we'll explore the multiple meanings of legacy by discussing things you can do to enrich your life in retirement, how to give back to your community and make a difference, and unique and special ways to put your stamp on that final goodbye. Joining us to talk about the shifting thinking around legacy is Mike Drak. Mike is an author, a public speaker, and a retirement lifestyle consultant for HomeEquity Bank. He's published 3 best-selling books, including Longevity Lifestyle by Design, and he dedicates his time to helping others design a fulfilling, meaningful retirement lifestyle for themselves. Thanks so much for being here, Mike.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
You know, when I just said that, I thought, this is your legacy in a way, is what you're doing for other people.
No, true. Very true.
It's amazing how we're shifting the way we think about this idea of legacy. So you have a financial background, so it's in your DNA, but really the idea is to think beyond money, you know, on what your legacy can look like. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, yeah, you know, I thought everything was dependent upon money and how much money you saved and all these things. This is bankers, this is what we talk to our clients about, but I learned a lot about legacy just over 10 years ago. I was at a funeral of a good friend of mine, childhood friend, and I was sitting there listening to what people were saying. And I said, wow, you know, what do I want people to say when it's my turn? And that got me really into it. And I was thinking about, you know, was I a good husband? Was I a good father? Did I raise my kids with good values? Did I help them get a good start in life? You know, what have I done with helping people? You know, in what ways have I helped them? And how have I given back and contributed to the community? So the focus all of a sudden switched from money, because they never talk about money or inheritance at a funeral.
Yeah, it's true.
They talk about a person's life and the memories and the happy moments. And that's when it started for me. And so I think about legacy every day.
So you're saying we have to shift this idea that we have, that legacy is about what you're leaving to people to help them with their wealth, to the wealth of memories, I guess.
Yes.
You might want to say. Why is this so important in your mind?
Well, it's another lesson that I learned from my mother this time was she spent the last year of her life in a nursing home. And in a nursing home, you know, you have this little small room. There's not a lot of space for possessions or things like that. One of the things is she had a box of pictures. And it was pictures taken throughout her life. And those were her memories. And then I clued into that, well, that's what we're left with at the end of the day, is our memories. And she lived off those memories for the last year of her life. And I used to go talk to her when I visited her, and we'd be going through different memories and things like that. And I said, yeah, that's what I need to do. I need to keep making great memories with my friends and family and the things that I do, because those are the things that are important at the end of the day.
And why do you think we have this shift in values? You know, what's different about where we are now as a society that we're thinking differently?
Well, hopefully we are thinking differently, but I think it's just that more people are talking about it, and we recognize that, hey, life is tough, and people need our help, especially our kids. I'm really scared about our grandkids right now, because you know, life's going to be a lot tougher for them, and so we're saying, okay, how can we make the world a better place? Because we're boomers now. We have boomer power. We have a lot of experience and knowledge, and yeah, we have the money too. So what can we do to help this world become better? And that's where we're spending our time now, and it's nice to see. And more people are doing it all the time, which is just wonderful.
It's nice to hear the word actually said out loud, because, you know, it sort of relates to the end of your life. We don't like to talk about that all the time, and yet it can be so rewarding. So the idea that we're actually having conversations and having more input into what our legacy is so important. And I wonder, like, how did you start thinking about legacy to begin with?
Well, it was just those things to say, I was so focused on money, and I said, okay, there's got to be more to life to this. And, what value can I give when I retired? And I had a lot of time, and I had freedom to do whatever I wanted. And I said, I've always enjoyed helping people.
I imagine you also had clients that you were dealing with that had money, and they probably talked about what they wanted to leave. So you would see, what happened
with
their families.
And we had these conversations, and, and we tried to change the conversation from maximizing wealth or maximizing how much you're going to live behind as to what good use could you put the money to now?
Right.
Now, while you're still alive, what good could you do? And, I see these people, and they try to almost hoard their money and maximize how much they have when they could be helping their kids out now when they need the help. Because, they're going to maybe buy a house, and they're going to need help, with a down payment and help maybe, servicing a mortgage. Mm-hmm. Kids' education, it's so expensive now. So why not contribute to that while you can early enough so those things can build up over time, and hopefully the kids can graduate with all these crazy student loans hanging over their head. So we're looking at that and saying, okay, how can we do that? What makes sense? And more people are going that way.
So the term is a living legacy.
Living legacy, yes.
Which is a great way to reframe the idea of legacy. It's pretty clear. What can you do while you're here?
That's right. And it's, we call it giving with a warm hand versus a cold one.
That's very direct.
Yeah, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
But the beauty in it is you can see the good your money is doing.
I love that.
And that's important. And, I don't like writing checks to a charity. I like to get involved. I call it sweat equity. I like to get involved with the charity. One of my friends, he does work for Habitat for Humanity. So he has these skills, and he goes there and he's banging nails, and he's helping put up a house. And at the end of the day, you can see the house, and you see the family that's going to live in the house. And it's so wonderful. You don't get that from giving just a straight check. And, those are things I look for.
And that's what you talk about, this whole idea of being connected to your community. I mean, that's how you're able to do things like your friend is doing. And that really is in line with many Canadians' thinking. In a recent survey by the Canadian Association of Retired Persons, almost 100% of respondents said that they plan to age in their current homes for as long as possible. And of course, that does take money. So what are some of the financial tools that allow you to do that?
I have to tell another story from my mother.
Please do.
And when my father passed away from pancreatic cancer, someone put the bug in her ear. You should sell your house right away and move into an apartment or a high-rise condo. And I remember she called me and she told me that's what she was thinking of doing. And I said, look, don't do anything until we talk. And later that day, I went over to see her, and she kept saying, what do you think about my plan? And I said, well, I don't really like it. And I said, why do you want to do it? And she goes, well, I'm nervous that, I'm going to have to hire someone to shovel the snow and cut the lawn, and, I'm not sure I have enough money. And it's a lack of understanding, because my father took care of all the money aspects. And I said, you don't have a problem, because you own a home. It's free and clear. There's no debt on it. And we can find ways of tapping into that equity and pay all these expenses. And then I said, it just makes perfect sense for you to do that. And she goes, no, I can't do that. I said, why? And she goes, I can't spend you and your brother's inheritance.
Oh, boy.
Really? And when she hit that, it was like someone stabbed me.
Wow.
And that's what I call a legacy trap. And so many people think that way, that, no, we can't touch this. And I said to my mother, I'll never forget it, I said, look, it's like the circle of life in The Lion King, right?
Yeah.
You took care of me you helped raise me, you protected me, and now it's our turn to do it. And money has nothing to do with it. Our job is to make sure that you're safe and you're happy. And I know you're not going to be happy moving in a high-rise condo where you don't know anyone. I know you love living here. You love being surrounded by your neighbors that you've known for years and years. Why would you ever move away from that? And I said, again, it's nothing to do with money. You're looking at it the wrong way. And then she thought about it, and she said, it was having that conversation, because people rarely have them. And then she clicked into it, and she goes, well, then I don't want to move anymore. And I said, great. And she spent the next 20 years of her life in that home, and she loved it. But she could have made a big mistake. And, you know, you have to watch out for things
Bit
like
of a knee-jerk reaction, almost. People just assume you have to leave.
You can't spend it, but they don't understand there's ways of making it work, too. But it's that mental thing to say, oh, I'm not allowed to do that. It's like kids today, they think everyone has to buy a house or you're a loser. No, you're not. And you don't have to buy a home. You just have to come up with a plan that works for you, right? So I hate these traps, and, you know, we got to do a better job with
It's a mentality, and bringing it up and talking about it, and, you know, this, talking to you about it on Explained is what helps educate people, show them other options, because there are other options, but when you're only talking to your very small group, you might not hear about them.
That's right. Good point.
So this is great. So can you elaborate on some of those financial tools that are available for folks that are thinking, oh, I didn't know that?
Okay, so one thing, you know, you have to be aware of a home, and I've just went through it, is you have to age-proof it, which costs money. And then the question is, how are you going to pay for that? And either, you know, one of the ways you can do is you can take a home equity line of credit, or you could take a reverse mortgage, and they both accomplish the same thing. I'm a fan of reverse mortgages because you don't have to make any payments. So you take out the reverse mortgage, you take out enough in any option of ways that you want, and you don't have to worry about things. And you can stay in that house as long as you want. And it just takes so much pressure off and stress off. You don't have to think about anything. Because you don't want people, you know, writing out checks every month and trying to figure out what their loan limits are and stuff like that. I didn't want my mother going through that. So, yeah, I always look for the simplest, best way of doing it and making it easy for people, and that's why I'm a fan of that product.
Makes sense. You had talked also about sweat equity. I think that's the word you used. When you like to get your hands dirty and get involved with a charity.
Yes.
Apart from it sounding good, what are the benefits? And you live it. What are the benefits to you as a person for getting actually involved versus writing that check?
There's been a lot of research done on this, and they know the happiest retirees are people that volunteer, that actually go out and do these things. These are the people you see volunteering at food banks or at hospitals. One thing I like to do is the Ride for Cancer. Like, I go out there and I get involved there, and, you know, I write my check because I get a little tired of asking people for contributions, right? But I love it because, you know, we're surrounded by people that all have their own cancer stories and things like that. And we're meeting these people and we're talking about how we can continue to contribute and help a great cause. And so those are things I look for, and there's all kinds of them around. But yeah, when you're involved, when you're giving back, you know, you're not just helping others, you're helping yourself. It's the good feelings attached to it, and giving is a longevity driver. You know, we know about it. So happy people live longer than unhappy people. So keep doing as many happy things as you can.
And it puts the twinkle in your eye, I'll tell you. You've got a great twinkle in your eye.
Thank you.
You do. See, it's even more now. Okay, let's talk about the term living legacy and how it relates to this idea of the bank of mom and dad, which unfortunately is a real thing.
Well, yes, and you know, like I said, the kids today have it a lot tougher, and it's going to even get tougher. They need help. I'm very concerned about stress levels for kids. There's so much coming at them. And there's so much unpredictability, even with employment. There's no guarantee you're going to get a job, never mind, you know, keep it for a long time. So really, part of my legacy is watching them and helping out as much as I can. So I don't want them stretched too thin. I don't want them, losing sleep about making a mortgage payment or things like that. That's one of the reasons I continue to work part-time, is to make sure I can contribute and help. I will not give them money so they can just blow it on something silly, but I'll give it to them to assist with their lifestyle and reduce pressure. And I also do things like, I know they need a break. So I say, okay, we're family vacation. Let's all go somewhere, and I'll take care of it. But they need these breaks, right? And when I can do that and be with my family, I really feel good too. So it's a great investment. I believe in making family investments that make sense and reduce pressure, and setting up my kids and grandkids for the long haul, right?
Right, and forgetting about this idea of like holding on to my money until it can be divided up.
That drives me crazy. And you don't know how many people I've seen, they like to manage control of this money, not give it away.
And not spend it on themselves.
That's right, but it's just sitting there, but they like to have control, right?
Yeah.
But I can understand it too, because I remember someone talking to me and they're saying they're getting a little tired at the holidays. The family gets together and the grandkids line up and he's passing out these envelopes.
Really?
And as soon as they get the envelope, oh, thanks, Papa, and they're gone. That's it. It's just, it's hurtful, really. Yeah. It shouldn't be that way. We need to do a better job.
I like that. That's a great way to end this, except I know that you have a giveaway for us, for our audience.
Yes.
Yes. Do you want to tell everybody what it is?
Oh, yes. So we're giving away a copy of Longevity Lifestyle by Design. HomeEquity Bank is very kind, so they're going to manage the process. All you have to do is give them a phone call and ask for a copy, and they'll send it out to you. And it's a very, very good book, believe me. Yeah.
And you're not just saying that because you're the author.
No, it's. I had to look at it on the way here and went, geez, this is good.
That's something. Well, we only skimmed the surface here, so that book will give more details. Thank you so much for being here, Mike.
And thank you. It was a pleasure.
And that number to call for your free copy of Longevity Lifestyle by Design, again, is 1-833-852-2447. And at the heart of building a legacy is making a positive impact on others and looking for those opportunities to give back, something Mike touched on briefly. So we're now joined by Aleksandra Vasic. She's the Director of Volunteerism at an organization called Volunteer Success. And thank you for volunteering to be here, Aleksandra.
It's a pleasure.
Tell us about this organization, Volunteer Success, and how did it get started?
Sure. Well, we got our start actually a few years before the pandemic. Our founder, Brian Prosserman, he thought, he was helping his kids in high school at the time, trying to find volunteer opportunities, having some challenges. And then he was also kind of trying to run a volunteer program, right? And so he's like, why is it so hard to find volunteers or find opportunities? So he had this interest in tech, started looking at, okay, what are the job sites and how are they set up? And can we bring something like that to the nonprofit sector? So he got us started, and then, he set us up as a nonprofit. We were incorporated, and then a couple years ago, we got charitable status, so we've started to seek grants. And now we're a team of 5, and so there's a couple people who work on the development side, software development, and then the rest of us are out there kind of like doing all the outreach. And I'm the subject matter expert in volunteer engagement. That's my background. I've worked as a volunteer coordinator, manager in different organizations.
Right, so you've got a great experience in the field of organizations with volunteers. So
that's right.
It's like a dating app for volunteering. I love it. Anything that helps pair us with what we need faster. So what is the process if I wanted to get started? What would be the process?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people will know that they need to go to a special website to find a job, right? But they don't necessarily think that there's like sites like ours that actually do the same thing but volunteer opportunities, right? So, or they, they may just talk, it's word of mouth, or they might know of some well-known charities and they go there, but it's a bit of a hit and miss process. So And also in Canada, traditionally, we have had a network of volunteer centers, but they're community-based. We are Canada-wide, and now we have organizations from coast to coast, and even some up in the north as well. So basically what happens is the organizations will post an opportunity, a specific kind of role that they want to fill, and then so it's like an ad, right? And a volunteer seeker would come to our site and they just do a search. And then if they click on a button that says, I'm interested, and then that organization...
Swipe right?
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
Almost. And then the organization gets an email to say, this person with this email address just showed interest. But at that point, really, then we've made the introduction, really then it's up to the organization. Because the organization then needs to do the screening. And it's not, depending on the role, it could be like the screening you do for an actual paid job, right? So there may be an application form, there may be an interview, references, police checks, all that stuff, right? So at that point, it's really about, the volunteer and the organization making sure it's a good fit.
So I'm guessing there's people that are watching and they're thinking, oh, okay, it's that easy. I can go to a site and I can see opportunities. But how do I know if I'm not a volunteer, if it's something I haven't done and I'm starting from scratch? How do I know what kind of volunteer opportunity I need to be looking for? What's going to be right for me?
Right, and it has to be personal, really. It has to be personally meaningful for you. So there's a whole bunch of considerations you want to look at as part of your self-reflection process, like, maybe there's a cause you particularly believe in, or maybe there's some sort of issue that, maybe a health issue, for instance, that's touched your family, right? And so now you want to give back. Maybe you want to meet like-minded people. Maybe you really love gardening and you want to join your local horticultural society, right? Or your botanical center, so you think about those things, and then you think about some practical considerations too, like, do you want to work from home? Because there are lots of virtual opportunities, by, Zoom or phone. Or, is it far? How far can you go? Can you drive? Do you have any other physical limitations? So you start with that kind of analysis and then reflection, and then you go and you do your research and see what's available and what kind of aligns with your needs and interests on a site like ours or your local volunteer center. And then, then you reach out. And I do tell people it's not that dissimilar from applying for a job. You kind of...
Which we keep coming back to,
Exactly.
Right?
So you do want to kind of apply to a number of different places before you actually find that perfect role that's going to be a good fit for you. And even if it doesn't work out, that's fine. You can just go find something else, right?
Break up? Do you just break up?
You can leave.
So you have mentioned it's like a job, yet the difference is this is something that you want to do, you're not going to get paid. And with jobs, you typically know the time commitment, 9 to 5, whatever.
Right.
How do you know what the time commitment's going to be for a volunteer position?
Typically that is, so in volunteer engagement, a good volunteer manager will have a position description, right? Just like a job description, except it's position, and they'll put in the time commitment there. So on our website, it's kind of obvious, on each opportunity, there's a little banner that says either it's ongoing or it's an event. So you can kind of choose, and sometimes, trying out an event is kind of a good way to get to know the organization, get to know the people, and see if it might be a good fit. I've onboarded a number of amazing volunteers just through an event.
As we're talking, something popped into my head, there's so many of the big charities that have volunteer needs that are our go-tos, but there's probably an organization for every subject matter and every interest that needs volunteers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I love my job right now because I see the most amazing opportunities pop up and I always think, oh, I want to do this.
Really?
I want to do this.
Well, you can or you can't. You can't volunteer all the time.
No. But and they're with organizations that I've never heard of, right? And so it's true, I've had so many people come to me and say, Alex, I applied to volunteer at Sick Kids Hospital and nobody ever got back to me. Well, one of the top kind of organizations, institutions in the country, a lot of people have been touched by it. Yeah, you want to volunteer there, but like the reality is they're going to have more people applying than they can offer positions to. So it's so good to go to a website like ours and just see the range of organizations, the range of opportunities that are out there.
We know for a fact that volunteerism is good for us, especially as we get older.
Yeah.
Why is that, do you think?
Oh my God, so a couple of years ago, we actually got a grant from the Ministry of Seniors and Accessibility to promote volunteering to older adults. And I started doing the research, and it kind of blew me away, I have to say. First of all, I didn't realize that earlier retirement is actually associated with increased risk of dementia. I did not know that. And that volunteering actually, it's the reverse. It actually decreases your risk of dementia. And it kind of makes sense, because when you retire, you may be losing your sense of purpose, the structure to your day, the social connections, the mental stimulation, right? Volunteering can give that back to us. We also know that depression rates tend to be decreased by volunteering across the lifespan, right? Like at all ages, right?
Wow. Is that through, because you're being socialization and...
all those things, so many things. I mean, actually, there's one particular really lovely study that was done almost 10 years ago, where they gave a group of retirees who had hypertension, they gave them some money. Half of them, they were supposed to spend it on themselves. The other half, they were like supposed to give it away. And then they measured their blood pressure. And in fact, the group that gave their money away, they actually have decreased rates of blood pressure comparable to what you get from medicine or exercise. So, like, it's physiologically, altruism is good for us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the previous speaker was just talking about the fact that, it's better than writing a check. So I suspect in this case it was the fact that these people were physically handing the money to somebody else, right? It's that tangible act, right, that actually makes a difference.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a lot of time. Like, there was a 2020 data review that looked at a whole bunch of studies, and it's really like 100 hours a year can make all these differences in mental health, in longevity, just like everything, right? Like, there's so much improvement, and it's not a lot of time that you need to give to it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of outlining the fact that if you're afraid of the concept of that you're going to be spending all your time doing this volunteer position, not at all. There's a range. It can be something that actually is fun to do.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be that much
Right?
time. It really, really shouldn't. And also, people shouldn't be afraid of this kind. Like, I know that people sometimes when they go into retirement, they don't want to commit, right? Because they've just left a big commitment. But that commitment, that little bit of time commitment, will actually give you that structure to your day, to your week, that can be really important. And really, the longer you stay with an organization, kind of the more confident you get, the more effective you can be in the role. So and listen, an organization, if you're a good volunteer, they're going to do what they can to retain you. They'll give you the flexibility. They'll give you the time away. You need time for caregiving or an extended vacation, whatever. They'll welcome you back, absolutely.
Wonderful.
You
Thank
get to call the shots.
Well, sure, at that point, yeah. And you get to call the shots right now. Please let everybody know how they can reach you and your organization.
Yeah, so our main website is actually called volunteersuccess.com. They can visit there. But we actually have a secondary website we built out specifically for adults 55 plus called nextstagevolunteering.com. And it's full of like educational articles about the benefits and how to do it and all kinds of great stuff. Plus, it links to the opportunities on our main site. So either one of those two sites, volunteersuccess.com or nextstagevolunteering.com.
Wonderful. Aleksandra, thanks for being here.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you so
Really
much.
good information.
Great.
When you're invested in building a rich living legacy through shared family experiences and giving back, your funeral just might be the final framing of your life, and it should be personal. Here to guide us through the talk before it's needed is Calvin Carter. He's a sales manager for Greater Toronto with Dignity Memorial, North America's largest provider of funeral, cremation, and cemetery services. And thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me,
Calvin.
Liz.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
We're going to talk about the F word, funerals, something that I'm going to just say right up front, not my favorite subject. I am uncomfortable about this. I'm guessing other people are too, but we're going to dive in, and it's a pleasure to have you here. And I want to start by asking about funerals in general. And, you know, as everything else changes over the years, have they changed too?
Absolutely, they have. I've noticed, I've been in my profession now for about 17 years, and even in my short time, 17 years being considered short in the funeral profession, there has been tons of involvement, not just from the perspective of people changing or wishing for different kinds of services, but looking for different ways that they can express the life that they lived and how they might leave that behind. I've also noticed a trend that in Canada specifically, cremation is becoming a lot more popular than it was, say, 15, 20 years ago. And because of that, there are a lot more opportunities and availabilities for us to personalize a service.
Do you find that people are more involved or invested almost in the event that will eventually take place for all of us?
Absolutely. People tend to come to us after there's been a major life event that's triggered them to either want to discuss funerals, or now where unfortunately they're at a point where they need to discuss it. And you had mentioned it's not everybody's favorite conversation. Myself and my team, we try to make it as easy as possible going through the process of funeral services and talking about the different ways that we can have perhaps certain traditions or family celebrations involved. Really makes it a bit of an easier process. And when you pre-arrange, you really get to have this conversation ahead of time. When you're thinking clearly, you're not under the distress or the emotional trauma of just recently losing a loved one. It gives you more time to think and put your own input into how you would want to be remembered.
So we're talking about planning your funeral. And I'm guessing it would be ideally before you need to do it. Am I right about that?
Absolutely. Pre-arranging has tons of benefits. We've noticed people commonly pre-arrange for one of two reasons. The first is the emotional aspect, what we were just touching on a bit, not having to walk into a funeral home on the worst day of their life to talk about this subject, as well as is removing the burden from their family members. There's no guessing as to, is this what my loved one really would have wanted? Am I doing the right thing? The second reason we find people pre-arrange is for the financial benefit. Unfortunately, we live in a world where inflation is a very real conversation that we need to have. Funerals are susceptible to that as well. But the benefit when you plan ahead is you actually get to lock in Ontario the current pricing structure that is set up on the funeral. The other benefit is you're not responsible for paying everything in full. So I know that money conversation is often one that comes up when we discuss funerals, but we work with a variety of different plans to make and suit any family's budget, whereas opposed to at the time of need, if a passing should occur, that payment would need to be made in full at once at the time services are needed.
So for anybody, not unlike myself, who thinks, oh, really, do I really have to do this? How long does it take to get past that feeling? You know,
I don't know if we ever get past that feeling, Liz. We recognize it's not a comfortable subject. So when you pre-arrange, our team of family service counselors can actually do that pre-arrangement with you in your own home, perhaps in an environment that you're a little bit more comfortable with. And we bring the tools to you so we can show and have that conversation. We've met families perhaps at a coffee shop, you know, a mutual meeting point, because they're not quite comfortable walking through the door.
Yeah, no offense to you.
No, none taken ever either.
Okay, so we're in a different place in society. People are definitely more interested in how their funeral or end of life will look. What are some of the unique, kind of cool things people are doing or that are available?
There's so many different personalization options now, and we really encourage our families to think about that, especially when we pre-arrange. It could be as simple as saying, I don't want anyone wearing a suit to my funeral because I didn't like wearing suits.
Right.
We've had people in attendance that only are wearing Toronto Maple Leafs jerseys, for example, despite what just happened in the playoffs, unfortunately. But that sort of gives it more of an open opportunity for people to talk discuss and share memories versus not knowing. When you walk into a funeral or a visitation, it can be uneasy not showing or knowing how to express your condolences. Perhaps might be a family friend that you haven't seen for some time. So having different personal artifacts, in the room, whether it be, having dad's golf clubs, perhaps we have mom's sewing kit somewhere in the corner, because it serves as that icebreaker and really that conversation piece for us to discuss the stories that mom had.
So how much personalization can be made then? I'm a bit of a control freak. I'll be completely upfront. I'm probably going to be very specific, and are there limitations?
As long as it's legal, we will accommodate.
Okay.
An example that jumps to mind while we're talking about this is we had a gentleman who was an avid four-wheeler and ATV outdoor enthusiast. So for his service, he had cremation. We actually had his four-wheeler brought to the front of the chapel at the funeral home. His urn was placed on that, and that was his final resting spot while the service was going on. And at the end, his grandson, who he's very close with and they often did fishing together, drove his ATV out of the chapel. So it was a beautiful celebration that they were able to honor for him.
Wow. I guess, yeah, we do have a bit of a, it depends how many funerals any one person's been to in their lifetime. Maybe have a vision of what it's supposed to be like. Yeah. So how do you help people open their minds up to different possibilities and things that might not be so somber, things, which is part of the reason why it's hard to get our heads around it, I think.
Absolutely. It's such a good question, because oftentimes families will come to me or somebody like me and they'll say, Calvin, I really want to prearrange my funeral. I want to have a simple cremation, or I want to have a simple burial. The second question that I often follow up is, well, what does that look like for you? Because oftentimes we've developed, as you said, going and attending to services or participating, and that to you has become what you see as simple or as traditional, where to other families, maybe that's elaborate. So really getting to know and understand who it is that we're sitting with, and then we can make suggestions. We offer this great tool. It's called our personal planning guide. At the time a funeral is needed, without prearrangements in place, it's about 180 questions that a funeral director will ask somebody. Yes. And all those questions have to be answered in a very time-sensitive manner.
Yeah.
So what we did is we put all those questions into that personal planning guide, and we deliver it and prepare it for families so that when that time comes, all their executor next of kin have to do is walk into any funeral home with that tool.
Wow. So what are some of the questions you're asking? I'm almost afraid to ask you. How much time do we have? But I know, but what kind of questions are they?
Sure. So the first one, which we were just discussing, is what is the disposition? Is it going to be cremation or burial? Are we going to do a celebration of life, a memorial service? Are we going to have visitation? Is there going to be a graveside service? What type of merchandise would we like to have? What are the music selections? We need to know a little bit of genealogy and family history. What type of newspaper, or is it going to go to a website? So just kind of some of the questions. And as we sit here, I'm sure you could share that quite comfortably with me, and that, again, benefits of pre-planning. But it's at the time of need, when you're not thinking as you normally would, that's when they become much more difficult to answer.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I'm sure you see that all the time, a very stressful situation. So if I have decided to come see you and I've gone, answer the question, I'm feeling very relaxed and comfortable, 10 years from now, I don't like that song. Yeah. I thought I really liked the Maple Leafs, but now I'm not into them so much. Can I make changes to my plan?
Absolutely, you can. So we offer what we call the dignity differences. So it's 10 different plans that we offer families for making their funeral pre-planning. So one of them is lifetime flexibility. You can make any change to your plan that you wish, and it's actually quite common that we see that. We've noticed a trend where people are pre-arranging at a much younger age. And
what age, for example?
Well,
I'm just curious what you mean.
Typically, a major life event happens when they pre-arrange. So we're noticing people now in their late 50s, early 60s, really starting to dive into getting the plan. Perhaps they've just moved their parents into a care facility of some kind, and there was that major event where they thought, maybe I should get this done in place for my kids as well. So when we have these kinds of conversations ahead of time, it does make it much easier to eliminating those what-if questions.
And do you find, like, are people coming in on their own? Are they coming with their partners? Are they bringing, like, who's involved in this decision making? Because that, you know, sometimes it's nice to have moral support, or if you have a partner and you think, are we doing this together? Are we doing it individually? How's that work?
It's very common that we have husband and wife come in together or independently. What's always fun is when they have different perspectives as to what a funeral should be. You don't need to prearrange what your family has always looked after. You don't need to do what your spouse is doing. Really, the funeral is about what you want and how you would want your life remembered. And so we will do it on a rather individualist basis to gather and understand really what is it that's important to you, and then we can make recommendations to either the couple or individual. Now, as you mentioned, having moral support, we always value our family's input, and it's really important that we have them and let them know that we're doing this. Because oftentimes people will come, they'll make their pre-arrangements thinking, I've done this wonderful thing and I've left this gift for my family, but they forgot to mention that they left that gift for them. So at the time of need, families can suddenly realize, oh, these are the services. Perhaps we had something else in vision, but now it's nice to know that mom or dad or whomever had already made those plans.
You mentioned, well, actually, that's a great, I want to bring that up. Yeah. Advice for parents and who they need to tell about what plans they do or don't have.
I've always framed it that we're always planning for events in our life. We're planning for weddings, for retirements, for vacations, for birthdays.
We are, you're right.
So we need to plan for the one thing, unfortunately, we know is inevitable. Well, that and taxes. Unfortunately, we can't get around that. But making sure that we're involving our family in those plans to let them know what's being looked after. And we've had, as you said, people that want to make changes to their plan because they've realized maybe their hobbies or interests have shifted. Perhaps their ideology has changed, and now we don't want a big elaborate event. We want to keep things more intimate and close to family. So we always have those discussions and encourage children, grandchildren, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, let them know that you have this plan in place. But really, when you're doing that prearrangement, it's what I want to happen for our family and friends.
What if, I'm thinking about the uniqueness of an event. What if I'm, and we were just talking about volunteerism, so I'm a big supporter of a particular charity, whether for personal reasons or whether I just happen to be. How can I bring that, my support of a charity into my funeral?
That's such a great question, Liz. So oftentimes you'll see on obituaries, at the bottom of the obituary now, it will say, in lieu of flowers, please make a charitable donation to such and such organization. So what we've done at Dignity Memorial is we've partnered with not just all the big charities, but as well as some of the smaller community ones as well too. Right. A recent example I can think of, we just did a lot of work with the Toronto Humane Society. This particular client of ours, she was very active with her pets and making sure that, God forbid anything happened to her, that her pets would be looked after. So just one example of a charity that we work with. But again, there's so many that we can ensure that your friends and family's charitable or donation goes to the correct charity.
Earlier you mentioned the word trends. Are there trends in celebrations of life and funerals?
Absolutely there are. The trend that I have seen become more is a celebration of life versus that somber occasion that I think we were talking about.
And tell me more about the celebration of life, because I'm hearing the same thing, and I don't know if do you have a celebration of life and a funeral, or is it one or the other?
There's no wrong answer about doing it.
I like that.
So, you know, it really, again, goes back to the individual and what they'd like to have. Some people like to have that occasion where they're still having a funeral. Perhaps friends and family can get up, they can say a few words, but they also want to have that opportunity for a conversation and celebration to occur after. Perhaps you might want to toast a glass of wine at your celebration of life or a case of beer because that was you, and we're able to accommodate that at our Dignity Funeral Homes to ensure that the memory that you want is what we're going to leave for your family. So celebration of life has certainly become a lot more popular and more, I don't like using the word, but trendy for our families.
I think I recall someone who had it when they were still alive.
Yes, that would be called a living celebration of life. That way they're able to participate and kind words of comfort can be shared amongst too. Yeah, we have.
So is that something that is also available to plan if
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So if I come to see you, do you because if I don't know about it, then I might not think of it, but so are you able to say there's all sorts of options here? You could do this, you could do this, you could do this?
Exactly. So our Dignity Memorial provider, all of our family service counselors are able to sit down with families and really get to know and understand who they are, and then make recommendations based on the kind of services that they would want.
And so, when's the age? What's the magic time to start thinking about this, Calvin?
As difficult as it is to say, is now.
Okay.
While it's on our mind and while we're having the conversation, because funerals tend to be forgotten about, and they're waited till the very last moment until we have to make a difficult decision. Whereas we have those conversations today, we're able to alleviate all that financial and emotional stress at the time.
How do you frame it so that it's come on, it's going to be fun? That's what I'm looking for.
We put the fun in funeral.
Okay, so I'm going to go home and talk to my husband and my family about this. Any advice on how I broach the conversation without freaking out my children?
Of course, and that's a very common question that we hear. Just a few years ago, I got a call on Christmas Day because Mom and Dad came and met with me, did their funeral pre-arrangements, and decided to wrap it up and put it under the Christmas tree.
You're kidding. You're absolutely kidding.
Absolutely not, because on December 25th, I got a phone call from the children because they were worried something was wrong with Mom and Dad. When, of course, all they're doing is this is a gift for them to have. So
it is a gift. I agree.
It
is a gift.
And that's the way that I believe most people do frame it with their children, is we're doing this so that it alleviates the stress from you. That way, at the most difficult time of your life, all you have to do is make one phone call and everything's looked after.
Okay, I'm not going to let you leave today without telling, don't worry, sharing with us the most interesting, either celebration of life or funeral, however you want to, whatever it was, that you've experienced.
Sure. I walk into a funeral home every day of my life. And again, going back to, I'm quite comfortable with it, but I realize most people aren't. I unfortunately was participating in a very close colleague, friend's dad services. And as I walked in, I got the aroma of grass. And I'm thinking, why would there be grass in the funeral home? And then I started to smell some gasoline. I'm going, okay, this is interesting. What's going on? And lo and behold, I walked into the visitation suite. And what the funeral director had done was went and got a piece of sod and got Dad's all his lawn care and everything like that, and had that right next to him at the front of the chapel. And because Dad was so meticulous about having his lawn kept well, they wanted to honor him. But it was the senses of the smell, and I wasn't quite sure what was going on. I still don't know where that piece of sod came from, because I hope it wasn't from the front of the funeral home. But it was a beautiful way to celebrate a life lived, for
Someone's
sure.
missing a piece of grass.
Exactly.
That's really interesting. Do people ever request that and I'm guessing you're going to say yes, their pets be involved?
Absolutely, yes, for sure. Because to many, and myself included, pets are family. And having that inclusion for them is quite important to ensure that, again, this is what I want for my services, and pets being a large part of our life, I'd like to have them included too.
Have you ever done pet funerals?
So unfortunately, with the province, we're not allowed to look after those services quite yet. We're governed by the Bereavement Authority of Ontario, and that would have to be a separate provider from us.
Understood. Okay, how would someone get the process started with you if we've thoroughly inspired them and no longer we've gotten rid of any stigma attached?
Absolutely. So visiting the dignitymemorial.com website, you'll enter your postal code, and a list of the nearest Dignity Memorial providers will come up. You'll click on that link, and you can actually go on and schedule your appointment right from the website.
And if you have to change it, because you chicken out, you just change it.
Then once you find your local provider, you can give them a call and make any alterations to change to appointments and things of that nature. And then you would be sitting down and meeting with a family service counselor such as myself to get that plan started.
And if someone's thinking that maybe they're not in a good financial position right now, is there an affordable way and payment plans and all those good things?
Absolutely. I have my pre-arrangement for myself, and my plan started as low as $30 per month. So absolutely, we can start the planning process right away, and we'll tailor a package to fit any family's budget needs.
And you had mentioned earlier about when we were talking before we started about your dad being a funeral director, and even he was reticent
Absolutely.
to get this going, but he did?
He did have his plans in place. I sat him and my mom down with one of our personal planning guides and forced them to fill that in. But yes, it was a resistant conversation. But the one thing that I learned is that they had an investment account that I had no idea that existed. So as their executor, I'd be responsible for having to go to contact and notify all of these agencies. But again, if I didn't fill out that book with them, I would have never been aware that account existed.
That's interesting. You should bring that up. I just went through something similar with my dad. So this process also brings in other elements of your life that are really important for the people left behind.
Absolutely. The book really serves as a roadmap. So your executors, your next of kin, your children, they're not worried about where they have to go to find all this information. A question that we commonly ask families is, would your executors know where the will is? Do they know where the deeds to your home are? Do they know where your life insurance policies? The nice thing about this personal planning guide is it kind of puts it all together in one place for them.
Okay. That is reason alone to take care of business. Get your house in order, as people say. And I hear a lot of people I'm watching going, oh, yeah, that's a really good idea. Thank you so much for being with us, Calvin.
Thank you so much.
Really appreciate your time today. And a big thank you to all of our guests who joined us as we learn more about how to live a rich legacy. And thanks to all of you for watching. I'm Liz West. Until next time.